The dust never settled in Ash Fork, Arizona, and neither did Olivia Morgan's exhaustion as she stumbled from the mercantile at dawn in 1883. Her fingers still aching from counting inventory since 3 in the morning, knowing she had exactly 30 minutes before her shift at the boarding house kitchen began. The territorial sun had barely crested the horizon when she pushed through the back door of Mrs. Halloway's establishment, tying her apron with practiced efficiency despite the tremor in her hands. She had not eaten since yesterday noon, but there was no time for that luxury. The boarding house residents expected their breakfast hot and plentiful, and Mrs. Halloway expected perfection, or she would dock wages that Olivia desperately needed. "You are late," Mrs. Halloway snapped, though the clock showed Olivia was actually 2 minutes early. The older woman's face was pinched with perpetual disapproval, her gray hair scraped back so tightly it seemed to pull at her temples. "No, madam, I am on time." Olivia kept her voice level respectful. She could not afford to lose this position. Mrs. Halloway sniffed, but said nothing more, turning her attention to inspecting the dining room while Olivia began cracking eggs into a large bowl. 42 eggs for 14 boarders. She had the routine memorized down to the last detail. Biscuits were already rising, having been prepared by the night cook before her shift ended. Olivia would handle breakfast, clean the kitchen, prepare lunch, and if she was lucky, she would have 15 minutes to sit down before her evening shift at the Silver Star Saloon began at 5. The saloon job was the worst of the three, but it paid the most. She served drinks and endured the comments and occasional wandering hands of miners and cowboys who rolled through Ash Fork with money burning holes in their pockets. She was not one of the upstairs girls, had made that clear from the beginning, and the owner respected that boundary even if some of the customers did not. She carried a small knife in her boot, had never needed to use it, but the weight of it gave her courage. 3 jobs. 3 different worlds within the same small Arizona town. All to keep a roof over her head and food in her belly, and to slowly, painfully save enough money to eventually buy the small piece of land on the edge of town where she could start her own business. A restaurant, perhaps, or a bakery. Something that was hers, where she answered to no one but herself. Her father had died 2 years ago in a mining accident, her mother 6 months after that from pneumonia and a broken heart. Olivia had been 19 when she became truly alone in the world, and she had learned quickly that survival required sacrifice. She was 21 now, and some days she felt 40. The morning passed in a blur of cooking and serving and cleaning. Mrs. Halloway found fault with the consistency of the gravy, though the boarders cleaned their plates without complaint. Olivia apologized and made note to make it thicker tomorrow, though she had followed the exact same recipe she always used. By the time she finished the lunch service and cleaned the kitchen, her feet throbbed in her worn boots. She had 13 minutes before she needed to be at the saloon. Just enough time to walk there slowly, perhaps splash some water on her face from the pump behind the building. The afternoon heat hit her like a physical force when she stepped outside. Arizona in July was unforgiving, the kind of heat that made breathing feel like work. Ash Fork sat in high desert country, surrounded by juniper and pinyon pine, with the San Francisco peaks visible in the distance on clear days. The town had grown up around the railroad and the ranches that supplied cattle to be shipped east. It was a hardscrabble place, beautiful in its own harsh way, full of people trying to carve out lives from unforgiving land. Olivia splashed water on her face and neck, letting it drip down and soak the collar of her dress. She did not care. The coolness was worth the dampness. She retied her dark hair, noting in the wavering reflection of the saloon's back window that she looked tired. Deep circles shadowed her brown eyes, and her cheeks seemed more hollow than they had a month ago. "You are early." Jake Morrison, the Silver Star's owner, looked up from his ledgers as she came through the back door. He was a fair man, somewhere in his 50s, with silver threading through his dark hair and a limp from an old bullet wound. "Mrs. Halloway's lunch service ended quickly today." "You look half dead on your feet, Olivia." "I am fine." "You are not fine. You are working yourself into the ground." He closed his ledger and studied her with concern that made her throat tighten. Kindness was harder to bear than cruelty sometimes. "How much sleep did you get last night?" "Enough." "How much?" 3 hours. She met his gaze steadily. "I need all 3 jobs, Mr. Morrison. Please do not suggest otherwise." He sighed heavily. "I am not going to fire you, girl. I just worry. Your mama would haunt me if I let you run yourself into an early grave." Olivia's mother had been friends with Jake's late wife. It was the only reason he had hired Olivia for the saloon despite her lack of experience. She owed him more than she could repay. "I will be fine. I am young and strong. Youth is not invincible." But he let the subject drop and waved her toward the bar. "We are expecting a crowd tonight. Couple of ranches just paid their hands." The saloon filled quickly as the evening progressed. Olivia moved between tables with practiced efficiency, carrying trays of whiskey and beer, dodging hands and deflecting propositions with firm politeness. The piano player banged out tinny melodies in the corner, competing with the noise of male voices and laughter, and the occasional argument that Jake would shut down before it escalated. She was delivering drinks to a table of railroad workers when she felt eyes on her. Not the usual leering stares she had learned to ignore, but something different, more intense. She glanced up and found herself looking at a man sitting alone at a corner table. He was tall, she could tell even with him sitting down, with broad shoulders and sun-weathered skin that spoke of days spent outdoors. His hat sat on the table beside a barely touched glass of whiskey, revealing dark hair that needed cutting. But it was his eyes that held her, pale blue in a tanned face, watching her with an expression she could not quite read. Not predatory like some men, but assessing. Curious. She looked away quickly and finished distributing the drinks. When she risked another glance, he was still watching her. "Another round here, sweetheart?" One of the railroad workers grabbed her wrist as she turned to leave. His grip was too tight, fingers digging into her skin. "Let go, please." She kept her voice calm despite the spike of alarm. "Come on, just sit with us a minute." "You have been running around all night." "I am working. Please let go." The man's face darkened with drink and offense. His grip tightened further. "I am just being friendly. No need to be rude." "The lady asked you to let go." The voice came from behind her, deep and calm and carrying an edge of steel beneath the politeness. The railroad worker looked past Olivia to whoever had spoken, and something in his expression changed. His hand released her wrist immediately. "No harm meant, I am sure." The voice was closer now, and Olivia turned to find the blue-eyed man standing beside her. Up close, he was even taller than she had thought, easily over 6 feet, with the lean strength of someone who made his living with physical labor. He wore range clothes, dusty from travel, and a gun belt sat comfortably on his hips in a way that suggested familiarity with its use. "Madam, are you all right?" "Yes, thank you." Her wrist throbbed where the man had grabbed her, but it was nothing serious. "You have been on your feet all evening." "Can I buy you a drink? I am working." "Jake," he called across the room without looking away from her, "can Miss Olivia take a break?" "She can take 15 minutes, Jake called back, and Olivia wanted to both thank and curse him. The blue-eyed man smiled slightly. "Seems you have permission." Please, just 15 minutes, she should refuse. She had no time for whatever this was, but her feet hurt and her wrist throbbed, and there was something in his face that made her curious despite herself. "All right. 15 minutes." He gestured to his corner table and waited until she sat before taking his own seat. Up close, she could see the lines around his eyes, the small scar above his left eyebrow, the calluses on his hands. A working man, probably mid-20s, weathered by sun and wind. "I am Elijah Irving," he said. "Most people call me Olivia Morgan. I know. I asked Jake about you." That should have alarmed her, but his tone was matter-of-fact rather than threatening. "Why?" "Because I have been watching you for the last 2 hours, and I needed to know your name before I made a fool of myself." He pushed his untouched whiskey toward her. "You look like you need this more than I do." She did not normally drink, but the whiskey beckoned. She took a small sip, letting it burn down her throat and bloom warmth in her chest. "You still have not said why you were watching me." "You are the hardest working person in this room, maybe the hardest working person in this town." He leaned back in his chair, studying her with those unsettling blue eyes. "Jake tells me you work 3 jobs, the mercantile before dawn, the boarding house through the day, here in the evenings." "I do what I need to survive." "That is not surviving. That is slowly killing yourself," she bristled, setting down the whiskey glass harder than necessary. "You do not know anything about me or my circumstances." "You are right, I do not. But I know exhaustion when I see it, and I know what happens to people who push themselves past their limits." Something flickered in his expression, old pain perhaps. "I lost my sister that way. She worked herself sick trying to take care of our family after our parents died. By the time I was old enough to help, it was too late." Olivia's anger deflated as quickly as it had risen. "I am sorry. It was 5 years ago. I was 18, she was 23. Since then, I have built up my ranch to something good, something that could support a family." He leaned forward, elbows on the table, expression earnest. "I am not courting you, I know we just met, but I am going to make you an offer, and I want you to really think about it before you answer." "What kind of offer?" Suspicion crept back in. "I need help at my ranch. I have been trying to manage it alone, but I am at the point where I need to hire someone. Cooking, cleaning, helping manage the household side of things. 1 job instead of 3. The pay would match what you are making now from all 3 combined, and you would have your own room, your meals provided." He held up a hand when she started to speak. "Before you say no, I want you to know this would be a legitimate job. Your own space, your own lock on your door. I am offering employment, nothing else." "Why me?" "You do not know me." "Because I watched you for 2 hours tonight, and I saw someone who does not quit even when they should. Someone honest and hardworking and capable. Those are the qualities I need in someone helping run my home." He met her eyes steadily. "And because Jake vouches for you, and his word means something to me." Olivia's mind spun. It was too good to be true, which meant it probably was not true at all. What would people say? A single woman living at a bachelor's ranch. People talk no matter what you do. "But if it matters, my foreman and his wife live on the property too, in their own cabin about a 1/4 mile from the main house. You would not be alone out there with just me." "I do not know you." "That is fair. So here is what I propose. Come out to the ranch tomorrow. See the place, meet my foreman and his wife, see the room that would be yours. Talk to them about me, ask them anything you want, then make your decision." He stood, placing coins on the table to pay for his whiskey. "I am not trying to pressure you. But Olivia, you look like you are 1 bad day away from collapsing. You deserve better than this." He settled his hat on his head and walked toward the door, leaving Olivia sitting alone at the corner table with her head spinning and her heart beating too fast. Jake appeared beside her chair a moment later. "Your break is up, but we are slow enough now that you could probably head home early if you wanted." "Jake, What do you know about Elijah Irving, Illy? Good man. Runs the Double I Ranch about 5 miles outside town. His father started it, and Illy built it up into something prosperous after his parents passed. Works hard, treats people fair, does not drink much or gamble at all. Comes into town maybe once a month for supplies and to pay his hands. Jake studied her curiously. Why? He offered me a job. Understanding dawned on Jake's face. Working at his ranch. Yes. Is he trustworthy? About as trustworthy as they come. His foreman is Charlie Dawson, been with the family for 15 years. Charlie's wife, Me, is a good woman, used to help your mama with church socials. Jake's expression was thoughtful. It would be better than this, Olivia, better than working yourself to death across 3 jobs. It feels too convenient, like there must be a catch. Sometimes good things happen without catches, not often in this life, but sometimes. Jake squeezed her shoulder gently. Go see the place tomorrow before you decide, but if you take it, know that you will always have a job here if you need one. Olivia barely slept that night, her mind churning through possibilities and fears. She rose at her usual time and trudged to the mercantile, her body moving through the familiar routine while her thoughts remained on Elijah Irving's offer. By the time she finished at the boarding house that afternoon, she had almost convinced herself not to go see the ranch. It was foolish to even consider it, but her feet carried her to the livery stable anyway, where she paid precious coins to rent a horse and buggy for the afternoon. The owner gave her directions to the Double I Ranch, and she set off before she could change her mind. The ride took nearly an hour, following a well-maintained road that wound through high desert landscape. The July heat was oppressive, but there was a stark beauty to the terrain with its scattered juniper trees and red rock formations rising in the distance. The San Francisco peaks loomed to the north, their summits still holding patches of snow even in summer. The Double I Ranch announced itself with a wooden arch over the road, the brand burned into the crossbeam. Beyond it, the land opened into a wide valley with a creek running through it, green grass growing along its banks. Cattle grazed in the distance, fat and healthy looking. Closer in, she could see several buildings. A large barn, a bunkhouse, a smaller cabin set off to one side, and the main house. The house was not fancy, but it was well built and maintained. A solid structure of wood and stone with a wide porch and real glass windows. Flower boxes sat beneath those windows, though the plants in them looked thirsty. As Olivia pulled the buggy to a stop in the yard, the front door opened and Elijah stepped out onto the porch. He had cleaned up since last night, his dark hair still damp from washing, wearing a fresh shirt though he still wore his work pants and boots. You came. I am just looking. I have not decided anything. She climbed down from the buggy, suddenly very aware of how dusty and rumpled she must look after a full day of work. That is all I ask. He came down the porch steps with an easy grace. Let me show you around. He walked her through the property, pointing out the various buildings and explaining the ranch's operations. He ran about 200 head of cattle, sold beef to the railroad and to buyers who drove herds to market. He employed 4 full-time ranch hands plus his foreman Charlie, though the hands mostly stayed in the bunkhouse or out on the range. The cabin he had mentioned belonged to Charlie and Me Dawson, and he led her there next. Me was outside hanging laundry, a sturdy woman in her 40s with kind eyes and work-roughened hands. She broke into a smile when she saw Olivia. Olivia Morgan. Land sakes, child, I have not seen you in ages, not since your poor mama's funeral. Me wiped her hands on her apron and pulled Olivia into a quick hug. How are you holding up? Well enough, Mrs. Dawson. None of that Mrs. Business, you call me like you always did. Me stepped back and looked her over with a critical eye. Though you look like you have not been sleeping or eating enough. Are you taking care of yourself? I am working 3 jobs, me. There is not much time for taking care of myself. That is what Ali told us. He said he offered you work here. Me glanced at Elijah with approval. It is a good offer, Livy. Charlie and I would love to have another woman around, and this house could use someone to manage it proper. Ali does his best, but he is a bachelor through and through. I am standing right here, Ali said mildly. We know. Me grinned at him without apology, then turned back to Olivia. Come inside and have some tea. Let me tell you what it is really like working for this man. Over tea in Me's cozy kitchen, Olivia learned that Ali was a fair employer who paid on time and treated his workers with respect. He was quiet, kept to himself mostly, but he was not unkind. He worked as hard as any of his hands, often harder. He did not drink to excess or chase women or gamble away his money. His only real flaw, according to me, was that he was stubborn as a mule once he got an idea in his head. Like this idea of hiring help for the house, Me said. He has been talking about it for months, but he wanted to find the right person, someone trustworthy and hardworking. When he came back from town last night talking about you, Charlie and I knew he had made up his mind. He saw me working in a saloon for one evening and decided to offer me a job. That seems impulsive. Ali is not impulsive about anything. If he offered you the job, it is because he thought it through. Me reached across the table and squeezed Olivia's hand. I know you are scared. You have been on your own for a long time now, and trusting people is hard. But this is a good opportunity, Livy. Better than running yourself ragged across 3 jobs in town. After tea, Ali showed her the main house. It was simply furnished but clean, with a large kitchen, a sitting room, and 3 bedrooms upstairs. He showed her the room that would be hers, a corner space with windows on 2 walls and a sturdy door with a lock and key. The lock was already there, he said, perhaps sensing her checking for it. My sister used this room when she lived here. After she passed, I did not have the heart to change anything, so it has mostly sat empty. The room was bigger than the tiny space Olivia rented in town, with a real bed frame and mattress, a wardrobe, a washstand, and a small desk beneath one window. The other window looked out over the valley and the mountains beyond. Your duties would be managing the household, Ali continued, standing in the doorway rather than entering the room. Cooking for me and for Charlie and me when they take meals at the main house, which they do a few times a week. Keeping the house clean and in order. Managing supplies and letting me know what needs to be purchased. Mending and laundry. The ranch hands do their own cooking and cleaning in the bunkhouse, so you would not need to worry about them except for special occasions. What kind of special occasions? Holidays, maybe a celebration if we have a particularly good sale. Times when it makes sense to bring everyone together. He paused. The hours would be long during the day, but your evenings would be your own. You would have Sundays off entirely. The pay is $30 a month plus room and board. $30 was more than she made from all 3 jobs combined after paying for her room and meals in town. It was almost too generous. Why so much? Because good help is worth paying for. And because I remember what it is like to struggle. He met her eyes directly. I am not going to pretend this is charity, Olivia. I need the help, and I think you would do the job well. But I also know this would be better for you than what you are doing now. If that makes me selfish, so be it. She walked to the window and looked out at the vast landscape, the mountains purple in the distance, the sky so blue it hurt to look at. She thought about Mrs. Halloway's constant criticism, the grabbing hands at the saloon, the pre-dawn hours at the mercantile. 3 jobs that were grinding her down to nothing, leaving her with no life beyond exhaustion. I want to accept, she heard herself say, but I am scared. Of me. His voice was quiet behind her, of being disappointed, of this not being what it seems. That is fair. So how about this? Try it for 1 month. If at the end of that month you decide it is not working, I will pay you the full month's wages and personally drive you back to town with a reference letter. No questions asked, no hard feelings. Olivia turned to face him. He stood in the doorway still, giving her space, his expression open and honest. She thought about Jake's endorsement, about Me's approval, about the lock on the door and the view from the window and the possibility of actually sleeping more than 3 hours a night. 1 month, she said. If it works, we can discuss continuing. Relief flickered across his face. When can you start? I need to give notice at my jobs in town. 1 week. 1 week is fine. I will come get you next Sunday with the wagon for your things. He smiled then, a real smile that transformed his serious face into something warmer. Thank you, Olivia. I think this is going to work out well for both of us. The week passed in a blur of notice-giving and packing. Mrs. Holloway was offended that Olivia was leaving, as if her departure was a personal insult. The mercantile owner was more understanding, even gave her a small bonus for her faithful service. Jake hugged her and made her promise to visit town regularly and to send word immediately if she needed anything. On Sunday morning, Ellie arrived with a wagon as promised. Olivia's possessions fit into 2 small crates and 1 battered trunk that had belonged to her mother. It was depressing how little she had to show for 21 years of life, but Ellie loaded everything carefully without comment. The ride to the ranch felt different this time, less like an investigation and more like a journey toward something new. Ellie kept up a steady stream of conversation, pointing out landmarks and telling her about the ranch's history. His father had started it 30 years ago with nothing but determination and a land grant. Ellie had grown up working cattle, learning the business from the ground up. You like it? Olivia asked. Ranching. I love it. There is something about working with the land, with the animals, building something that will last. He glanced at her. Do you like cooking? I do, actually. When I have good ingredients and time to do it properly. Most of my jobs have been about speed rather than quality. Here you will have both good ingredients and time. I want meals that taste good, not just fuel to keep working. Me is a decent cook, but she has her own household to manage. I have been mostly eating beans and bacon for months. I can do better than beans and bacon. I am counting on it. He helped her carry her belongings to her room, then left her to unpack and settle in while he went to work with the cattle. Me appeared an hour later with fresh linens and an offer to help organize the kitchen. Ellie has not done much cooking here, Me said diplomatically as they surveyed the somewhat sparse supplies. We should make a list of what you will need, and he can go into town tomorrow for supplies. They spent the afternoon taking inventory and planning menus. Me was easy to talk to, full of stories about the ranch and the area. She and Charlie had no children of their own, and Olivia sensed that Me was happy to have another young woman around. That first evening, Olivia cooked dinner for Ellie, Charlie, and Me. Nothing fancy, just roast chicken with vegetables and fresh biscuits, but she took her time and did it right. When Ellie took his first bite, he closed his eyes briefly. This is the best meal I have had in 6 months, he said. It is just chicken. It is not just chicken. It is chicken cooked by someone who knows what they are doing. He smiled at her across the table. I think this is going to work out very well. The days fell into a new rhythm. Olivia woke with the sun rather than before it, prepared breakfast, cleaned the house, planned and cooked meals. The work was still demanding, but it was different, somehow more satisfying than her previous jobs. She was building something here rather than just surviving. Ellie was a quiet presence, often gone during the day working the ranch, but appearing reliably for meals. He was unfailingly polite, thanking her for every meal, asking if she needed anything. He did not hover or make demands. Sometimes in the evenings he would sit on the porch reading while she cleaned the kitchen, and occasionally they would exchange a few words about the day. A week passed, then two. Olivia began to relax, to believe that this arrangement was real and would last. She started sleeping through the night for the first time in months, her body finally able to recover from the exhaustion she had been carrying. Me became a true friend, often coming over in the afternoons to keep her company or to teach her ranching skills like how to preserve food for the winter or how to treat common cattle ailments. It was during the third week that things shifted. Olivia had been hanging laundry in the yard when one of the clothesline posts suddenly snapped, sending wet sheets cascading into the dirt. She stood there staring at the mess, and to her horror felt tears welling up. It was such a small disaster, easily fixed, but something about it broke through her composure. "Hey, what happened?" Ellie's voice came from behind her. "He must have been working in the barn. The post broke. I will fix it." She bent to gather the soiled sheets, willing the tears back. "Olivia." His hand touched her shoulder gently. "Are you crying?" "No." But her voice broke on the word. "Come here." He turned her gently and pulled her into his arms, and that simple kindness shattered her completely. She found herself crying into his shirt, great gasping sobs that she could not control while he held her and murmured soothing nonsense. When the storm finally passed, she pulled back mortified. "I am so sorry. I do not know what came over me. I do. You have been holding everything in for a very long time." He produced a handkerchief from his pocket and handed it to her. "It is all right to fall apart sometimes. That is what happens when you finally feel safe enough to stop holding yourself together." She wiped her eyes, unable to meet his gaze. "I got your shirt wet. It will dry. Are you all right now?" "I think so. I feel foolish." "Do not. We all have breaking points." He studied her face with concern. "Is this about the laundry post or is something else wrong? Are you unhappy here?" "No. No, I am happier here than I have been in years. That is almost the problem. I keep waiting for something to go wrong for this to be taken away." She laughed shakily. "And then a stupid post breaks and I lose my mind over it. The post breaking is not your fault. The wood was old. I should have replaced it months ago. I will put up a new one this evening." He hesitated, then added softly, "And this is not going to be taken away, Olivia. You have a place here for as long as you want it. The month is almost up." "I know. I have been hoping you would agree to stay on permanently." She looked up at him then, really looked at him. His blue eyes were warm with concern, his expression open and honest. Somewhere over the past 3 weeks, he had stopped being her employer and started being something else. A friend, maybe. Or possibly something more complicated that she was not ready to name. "I would like to stay," she said quietly, "if the offer still stands." "It stands." His smile was like sunrise. "I am glad, Olivia, very glad." He went to fix the clothesline, and she went to rewash the sheets, and neither of them acknowledged that something had shifted between them in that moment. But it had, and they both knew it. The weeks turned into months. Summer faded into autumn, and the Arizona landscape transformed into shades of gold and rust. Olivia's life at the ranch became fully realized. She knew which floorboards creaked, which stove burner heated fastest, where the light was best for reading in the afternoon. She knew that Eli took his coffee black, that he was quieter in the mornings, that he had nightmares sometimes that left him pacing the porch in the middle of the night. That last one she discovered in late September. She had come downstairs for a glass of water and found the front door ajar, Eli's silhouette visible on the porch against the starlight. She debated going back upstairs, giving him privacy, but something in the set of his shoulders made her push the door open. "Cannot sleep," she asked softly. He turned, clearly not expecting her. Did I wake you? No, I was thirsty. She came to stand beside him at the porch rail. The night was cool, a relief after the day's heat, and the sky was dizzy with stars. Do you want to talk about it? Bad dream, nothing important. Illy. She waited until he looked at her. You do not have to tell me, but you do not have to lie either. We are past that, are we not? He was quiet for a long moment. I dream about my sister sometimes, about finding her too late. She had collapsed in the kitchen, and by the time I got home from working the range, she had been lying there for hours. His voice was flat, reciting facts to keep emotion at bay. The doctor said it was her heart, weakened by years of overwork and stress. She was 23 years old and she died on the kitchen floor because I was not there. That was not your fault. I know that intellectually, but knowing it and feeling it are different things. He looked back out at the stars. When I saw you in the saloon that night, exhausted and pushed to your limit, all I could think about was Sarah, about how she looked in those final months, ground down to nothing. I could not just walk away. So you offered me a job. I offered you a lifeline. For my sake as much as yours, maybe. He glanced at her with a wry smile. Is that selfish? If it is, then I am glad you are selfish. She reached out and squeezed his hand briefly. Thank you, Illy, for seeing me when I needed to be seen. His fingers tightened around hers before she could pull away, holding her hand gently. You are easy to see, Olivia. You shine, even when you are exhausted. Her breath caught. They stood there in the starlight, hands clasped, balanced on the edge of something neither of them had named yet. Then Illy released her hand and stepped back. You should get some sleep. Morning comes early, so should you. I will. In a bit. But his eyes followed her as she went back inside, and she felt the weight of his gaze like a touch. After that night, things between them grew both easier and more complicated. There was an awareness now, an acknowledgement of attraction that hummed beneath their daily interactions. Illy found more reasons to be near the house during the day. Olivia caught herself watching for him, listening for his footsteps. They talked more, long conversations over dinner or in the evenings on the porch. She learned about his dreams for the ranch, his love of this harsh, beautiful land. He learned about her parents, her grief, her own dreams of independence. You still want your own business? He asked one October evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. I do not know any more. I thought I wanted it because it meant security and independence, but I have those things here. She pulled her shawl tighter against the cooling air. Maybe what I really wanted was a home, a place where I belonged. Have you found that here? She turned to look at him, this man who had offered her salvation and become so much more. I think I have. He held her gaze for a long moment, and she saw the question in his eyes, but he did not ask it, and she was not quite brave enough to answer it yet. The first snow came in November, early and unexpected. Olivia woke to find the world transformed, white blanketing the high desert landscape. Illy appeared for breakfast dusted with snow, having already been out checking on the cattle. We need to bring the herd closer to the barns, he said as he shed his coat. This snow is not supposed to last, but I want them where we can watch them. You need help? No, the hands and I can manage, but could you prepare something hot for lunch? The men are going to be cold and hungry. She made a huge pot of beef stew and fresh bread. And when Illy and the ranch hands came in at midday, half frozen and exhausted, she served them at the big kitchen table. Watching them eat her food, seeing their obvious gratitude, gave her a fierce satisfaction. This was her home. These were her people in a way, and she could take care of them. Illy caught her eye across the table and smiled, and she knew he understood what she was feeling. That night after dinner, as she washed dishes and Ellie dried, he said quietly, "I need to tell you something." Her hands stilled in the warm dishwater. "All right. This is not what I intended when I hired you. I thought I was just finding good help for the ranch, but somewhere along the way it became more than that." He set down the dish he was drying and turned to face her fully. "I have feelings for you, Olivia. Real feelings. And I needed to tell you, even though I know it might complicate things." Her heart was beating so hard she was certain he could hear it. "Illy, you do not have to say anything. Your job is not contingent on your feelings. If you do not feel the same way, nothing changes. You still have a home here for as long as you want it." He held her gaze steadily. "But I could not keep pretending I only think of you as an employee. It is not honest, and you deserve honesty." She dried her hands slowly on her apron, gathering her courage. "What if I told you I have been hoping you would say something like that for weeks?" Hope flared in his eyes. "Have you? I have been falling for you since that night on the porch when you told me about Sarah. Maybe even before that." She stepped closer to him. "But I was afraid to say anything, afraid of risking what we have. And now I think pretending is worse than risking." She reached up and touched his face, feeling the scratch of stubble beneath her palm. "I care about you, Illy, so much it scares me sometimes." He covered her hand with his, turning his head to press a kiss to her palm. "I am scared too. I have not felt this way about anyone since. Well, ever really. But I think you are worth being scared for. Can we take this slowly, figure it out together, as slow as you need?" He drew her closer, wrapping his arms around her, and she rested her head against his chest. His heart beat steady beneath her ear, strong and sure. "I am not going anywhere, Olivia. Neither is this home we are building." They stood like that for a long time, swaying slightly, learning the shape of each other. When they finally pulled apart, Ellie cupped her face gently and kissed her forehead with such tenderness that her eyes stung with tears. "Get some rest," he murmured. "We have all the time in the world." But they took their time anyway, learning each other in increments. A held hand while walking to the barn, a kiss on the cheek before bed, long conversations about everything and nothing. Ellie courted her properly despite her already living in his house, bringing her wildflowers from the range and complimenting her cooking and finding small ways to show he was thinking of her. In December, they rode into Ash Fork together for supplies and Christmas shopping. It was the first time Olivia had been back to town since moving to the ranch, and she was struck by how different everything seemed. The streets felt cramped after the wide openness of the ranch. The saloon where she had worked looked shabby and small. They stopped at Jake's place for lunch. He took one look at them together, at their clasped hands and the way they looked at each other, and grinned. "Well, it is about time," he said. "I knew that job offer was not just about needing a cook." Illy had the grace to look sheepish. "Was I that obvious? Only to someone who knows you." "Congratulations, both of you. Olivia, you look better than I have seen you in years." It was true. Olivia had gained back the weight she had lost, her face filling out and color returning to her cheeks. She slept through most nights now, her body no longer running on exhaustion and determination. More than that, she was happy in a way she had almost forgotten was possible. Christmas came with more snow and a celebration at the ranch. Me and Charlie joined them for a feast, and Ellie gave Olivia a beautiful shawl he had ordered from a catalog, soft wool and deep blue that matched her favorite dress. She gave him a new hat to replace his battered one, and a book of poetry she had noticed him eyeing in the mercantile months ago. "How did you remember that?" he asked, clearly touched. "I remember everything about you." The words were out before she could stop them, too revealing, but his expression went soft with wonder. "I love you," he said simply. "I have been trying to wait for the right moment to tell you, but I do not think there is a right moment. I just love you. I love you too." Saying it felt like exhaling after holding her breath for months. "So much, Illy." He kissed her then properly, deeply, and she melted into him while me and Charlie discreetly found reasons to be looking elsewhere. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Illy rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he whispered. "Not today, not tomorrow, but someday soon. Say you will marry me, Olivia." "Yes." She was laughing and crying at once. "Yes, absolutely yes." They were married in March when the desert was blooming with wildflowers and the weather was perfect. The ceremony took place at the little church in Ash Fork with me and Charlie as witnesses and half the town in attendance. Olivia wore a dress that me helped her sew, simple but beautiful, and Ali wore his new suit with obvious discomfort, until she told him he looked handsome and he relaxed. Jake gave her away since her father was gone, and there were tears in his eyes when he placed her hand in Ali's. "Be happy, Livy girl. You deserve it." "I am happy," she whispered back. "So happy I almost cannot believe it is real." The preacher pronounced them husband and wife, and when Ali kissed her, the church erupted in applause and cheers. They held a reception at the ranch with food and dancing and celebration that lasted into the night. When it was finally over and the last guest had left, Ali carried Olivia over the threshold of their home, not just his home anymore, but theirs together. "Hello, Mrs. Irving," he murmured against her hair. "Hello, Mr. Irving." She looked around the familiar space, seeing it anew. "This is really our home now, officially. It has been our home for months. Today just made it legal." He set her down gently and took her hands in his. "I am going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret saying yes." "I could never regret you." She pulled him down for a kiss. "You saved my life, Illy. And then you gave me a reason to really live it." Their wedding night was tender and passionate, and everything Olivia had hoped for. Afterward, lying in Illy's arms in the bedroom they now shared, she felt a peace she had never known before. She had spent so long just surviving, fighting to keep her head above water, that she had forgotten what it felt like to truly thrive. "What are you thinking?" Illy's voice rumbled beneath her ear where she rested against his chest. "That I am glad that clothesline post broke." He laughed, the sound reverberating through both of them. "That is a strange thing to be grateful for. If it had not broken, I might not have fallen apart that day, and if I had not fallen apart, you might not have held me. And if you had not held me, maybe we would have kept dancing around our feelings for months longer. I like to think we would have figured it out eventually, but I am glad for that day too." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "I am glad for every day that brought us here. Even the day we met when you had to rescue me from that drunk railroad worker, especially that day. That was the day I realized I was going to fall in love with you, even though I did not know it yet." She propped herself up to look at him. "Really, really. You were so fierce and exhausted and determined not to show weakness. But you let me buy you that drink, and you let your guard down for just 15 minutes, and I was lost." He traced her cheekbone with gentle fingers. "I went home that night and could not stop thinking about you. By the next morning, I knew I had to see you again, hence the job offer. You are telling me you made up needing a housekeeper just to get me to the ranch." "I did need a housekeeper, but I could have hired anyone. I wanted you specifically." He grinned at her expression. "Are you angry?" "How can I be angry when it led to this?" She kissed him softly. "Though you could have just asked to court me properly. A woman working 3 jobs to survive does not have time to be courted. I needed to get you out of that situation first." His expression grew serious. "I meant what I said that night. You were killing yourself slowly, and I could not just walk away from that. My hero." But there was no mockery in her voice, only love. The seasons turned and their life together deepened. Olivia learned ranching alongside managing the household. often riding out with Illy to check the herds or help with branding. She was not just his wife but his partner in running the Double I, and he valued her opinions and insights. Together, they made the ranch even more prosperous, carefully investing in improvements and expansion. In the fall of their first year of marriage, Olivia realized she was pregnant. She told Illy one evening after dinner, watching nervously for his reaction. He was silent for a long moment, and then he swept her up into his arms and spun her around, laughing with pure joy. "We are having a baby," he kept repeating, wonder in his voice. "You are giving me a family, Olivia." "We are making a family together," she corrected, but she was laughing too, caught up in his happiness. Their son was born the following May, a healthy boy with his father's blue eyes and his mother's dark hair. They named him Samuel, after Illy's father, and from the moment Illy held his son for the first time, Olivia knew she was witnessing something sacred. The man who had been so worried about failing people he loved was cradling new life with infinite gentleness and awe. "Thank you," he whispered to Olivia as she rested in their bed, exhausted but exultant. "Thank you for this gift, for our son, for choosing me. Always," she promised, "I will always choose you." Me proved to be an invaluable help with the baby, having raised younger siblings back before she married Charlie. She taught Olivia about feeding and sleeping schedules and how to soothe a fussy infant. The ranch became a true family compound, with me and Charlie doting on Samuel as if he were their own grandchild. When Samuel was 6 months old, Illy and Olivia were sitting on the porch one evening, the baby asleep in his cradle nearby, and Illy said, "Do you ever think about where we started? About you working 3 jobs in town and barely surviving? Sometimes. It feels like a different life now, like that was a different person. In a way, she was. You are so different now, happier, more yourself." He reached over and took her hand. "I am grateful every day that I walked into that saloon. And I am grateful you were arrogant enough to think you could fix my life," he laughed. "I did not fix your life. I just offered you a different path. You are the one who did the real work of building this life. We built it together." She squeezed his hand. "That is what makes it good." The years continued to pass, marked by both challenges and joys. A drought one year that tested their resources, but they weathered it together. The birth of their daughter 2 years after Samuel, a fierce little girl they named Rose after Illy's mother. Samuel's first day helping with the cattle, so proud of himself at 5 years old. Rose learning to cook at her mother's side, showing the same determination Olivia had once needed just to survive. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Illy surprised Olivia with a trip to Flagstaff, the first time they had traveled overnight together since their honeymoon. Me and Charlie watched the children, and Illy and Olivia stayed in a real hotel with electric lights and indoor plumbing and felt like strangers in a strange land. "I prefer the ranch," Olivia admitted as they lay in the too-soft hotel bed that first night. "So do I. But I wanted to give you something special, something different. Being with you is special. It does not matter where we are." She rolled to face him in the darkness. "Do you know what I think about sometimes?" "What?" "About the night you offered me that job. If I had said no, if I had been too scared to take the chance, where would I be now?" She shuddered. "Probably dead, honestly, or so broken down I might as well be. You are stronger than you think. You would have survived somehow, maybe, but I would not have lived, not really. You gave me back my life, Illy, and then you gave me a reason to love it." He pulled her close, and they held each other in the expensive hotel room that felt nothing like home, and were grateful for everything they had built together. They returned to the ranch to find the children healthy and happy and full of stories about their adventures with me and Charlie. Samuel, now 7, solemnly informed them that he had helped Charlie fix the fence in the east pasture. Rose, at 5, showed them the cake she had helped me bake, slightly lopsided but made with love. "This is what matters," Ellie murmured to Olivia as they watched their children chatter excitedly. "Not fancy hotels or trips to the city. This, our family, our home." "I know." And she did, bone deep. She had learned the difference between surviving and living, between existing and thriving. She had learned that love was not about grand gestures, but about daily choices, about partnership and trust and building something together that was stronger than either person alone. The Double I Ranch continued to prosper. They expanded their cattle operation and added horses as well, breeding and training quality stock that developed a reputation throughout the territory. Samuel grew into a serious boy who loved working with the animals as much as his father did. Rose was more interested in the business side, often helping Olivia with the books and correspondence. "She has your head for numbers," Ellie observed one evening when Rose was 10, watching her help her mother calculate feed costs. "And your stubbornness," Olivia countered with a smile. "Once she gets an idea in her head, there is no changing her mind." "I have no idea where she gets that from." But his eyes were twinkling. When Samuel was 15 and Rose was 13, Olivia discovered she was pregnant again. It was unexpected, as she had assumed her childbearing years were behind her, and at first she was frightened. She was 36 now, older than was ideal for pregnancy. But Ellie was thrilled, and the children were excited about a new sibling, and gradually, Olivia's fear transformed into anticipation. The pregnancy was harder than her previous ones, her body not recovering as quickly as it once had, but everything progressed normally. Their third child was born in the spring of 1898, another boy they named Thomas. He was small but healthy, with a shock of dark hair and lungs that announced his displeasure at being born with impressive volume. "Our family is complete," Ellie said as he cradled his youngest son, Samuel and Rose crowding close to see their new brother. "3 beautiful children and the love of my life. I am the luckiest man alive." Olivia, exhausted but happy, watched her family gathered around her bed and felt a contentment so deep, it brought tears to her eyes. She thought about the girl she had been 15 years ago, working herself to death across 3 jobs, so tired and alone and desperate. That girl could never have imagined this life, this joy, this abundance of love. "What are you thinking about?" Ellie asked, always able to read her so well. "About how grateful I am that you walked into that saloon, about how different my life could have been. It would have been different. But you would have been fine. You are a survivor, Olivia, maybe, but I do not want to just survive anymore. I want to live, really live. And that is what you gave me." He leaned down and kissed her gently. "We gave it to each other. That is what marriage is, I think. 2 people choosing every day to build a life together." Thomas proved to be a curious, energetic child who kept them all on their toes. By the time he was walking, he was getting into everything, exploring the ranch with fearless determination. Samuel and Rose were patient with their baby brother, though Rose complained that he got into her things constantly. The territory changed around them. Arizona became a state in 1912, bringing new regulations and opportunities. The ranch adapted, continuing to thrive as Ellie and Olivia made smart decisions about expansion and modernization. They added a telephone line, then electricity, balancing progress with the traditional ranching values they held dear. Samuel, at 22, took over much of the day-to-day ranch operations, having learned everything his father could teach him. He was courting a sweet girl from Flagstaff, and Ellie and Olivia both knew a wedding was coming soon. Rose had surprised them by wanting to go to college, and they supported her ambition even though it meant she would leave the ranch for a while. Thomas, at 14, was still figuring out who he wanted to be, interested in everything and committed to nothing yet. On a warm summer evening in 1913, 30 years after they had first met, Ellie and Olivia sat on their porch watching the sunset as they had done countless times before. They were both in their 50s now, threads of silver in their hair, lines on their faces that spoke of years spent working and laughing and building a life together. "You remember your job offer?" Olivia asked suddenly. "When you told me to work one job instead of 3 and let you provide the rest." "Of course I remember. It was the smartest thing I ever said. It was presumptuous and arrogant and absolutely what I needed to hear." She reached over and took his hand, their fingers interlacing with the ease of long practice. "You changed my life that night, Ellie. We changed each other's lives. I was just a lonely rancher before you. You made this place a home. We made it a home together." She squeezed his hand. "And we are going to be grandparents soon. I know. Samuel told me he is planning to propose next month." Ellie shook his head in wonder. "How did we get old enough to have grandchildren, one day at a time, one choice at a time?" She looked out at the ranch spread before them, the land they had worked and loved for decades. "I would not change a single moment of it. Not even the hard parts, the drought year, the winter we lost half the herd to disease. The time Thomas fell from the barn loft and we thought he had broken his neck. Not even those. They are part of our story, part of what made us who we are." She turned to face him fully. "You know what I think about sometimes? About all those other versions of my life that could have existed. The ones where I said no to your job offer, where I stayed in town working myself to death. In none of those other lives am I as happy as I am in this one. I think about that too, about how close I came to not walking into that saloon that night. I almost went straight home." He raised her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "Best decision I ever made, staying in town that extra hour." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson and purple. The ranch settled into evening rhythms around them, cattle lowing in the distance, the sound of Thomas whistling as he finished his chores, the scent of the desert after a day of sun. "Work one mine and let me provide the rest," Olivia said softly. "That is what you offered me." But it turned out to be so much more than that. What did it turn out to be? Everything. A home, a family, a partnership, a love that has lasted 30 years and will last 30 more if we are lucky. She smiled at him, this man who had saved her and loved her and built a life with her. "You provided me with everything I never knew I needed. And you gave me a reason to come home every night. You gave me a family, children, a life worth living." He pulled her close, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. "I love you, Olivia Irving. Just as much today as I did the day I married you. More even because I know you better now. I know all your stubborn determination and your fierce loyalty and your capacity for love. I love you too. Always have, always will." They stayed on the porch until the stars emerged, bright diamonds scattered across the velvet sky. Inside the house, they could hear Thomas moving around and the sound of Samuel's truck pulling up the drive. Their family, their life, all around them. Eventually, they went inside together, hand in hand, ready for whatever the next day would bring. Because that was what they had built over 3 decades. Not just a ranch or a house, but a true home filled with love and partnership and the absolute certainty that whatever came, they would face it together. Olivia thought again about that exhausted girl working 3 jobs, barely surviving, and silently thanked her for being brave enough to take a chance on a blue-eyed cowboy's impulsive offer. That single choice had changed everything, had transformed survival into thriving, loneliness into love, desperation into joy. And she knew, deep in her bones, that she would make that same choice 1,000 times over. Because Ali had not just offered her a job that night in the Silver Star Saloon. He had offered her a future, a partnership, a love story that would last a lifetime. Work one job instead of 3, he had said. Let me provide the rest. And oh, how he had provided. Not just money or shelter or security, though he had given her all of those things. But love and respect and partnership, and a family and a home that was truly theirs. The girl who had been working 3 jobs to survive would have never believed this life was possible. But the woman she had become knew that with the right person, with love and trust and daily choice, anything was possible. As Olivia fell asleep that night in Ali's arms, in the bed they had shared for 30 years, in the house they had made a home, in the life they had built together from nothing but determination and hope and love, she felt only gratitude. Gratitude for the cowboy who had seen her when she needed to be seen, who had offered her not just employment but salvation, who had loved her through every season of their life together. And gratitude for herself, for the bravery it had taken to say yes to a stranger's offer, to trust in possibility, to choose love over fear. Their story was not over yet. Samuel would marry his sweetheart, and they would welcome grandchildren. Rose would finish college and return to help manage the ranch with modern business practices. Thomas would find his path eventually, maybe in ranching or maybe in something entirely different. The ranch would continue to grow and change, adapting to new times while honoring old traditions. But the foundation of it all, the bedrock upon which everything else was built, was the love between Ali and Olivia. The cowboy and the girl who had been working 3 jobs to survive. The partnership they had forged in those early days and strengthened through decades of shared life. That love would endure, Olivia knew, through whatever the future held. Because they had chosen each other, every day for 30 years, and they would continue choosing each other for whatever years remained. The house settled into nighttime quiet around them, the ranch peaceful under the stars, and Olivia drifted into sleep with a smile on her face and Ali's steady heartbeat beneath her ear. Home, she thought drowsily. This was home, and it always would be. Years continued to unfold like the pages of a beloved book. Samuel married his sweetheart Margaret in a beautiful ceremony at the ranch in 1914. And by 1916, Ali and Olivia were indeed grandparents to a robust baby boy named John. The sight of Ali holding his grandson with the same wonder he had shown, when holding his own children, never failed to make Olivia's heart swell. Rose returned from college with a degree in business and a fire in her eyes to modernize the ranch's operations. She implemented new bookkeeping systems and established contracts with buyers that stabilized their income. She was 23 and brilliant, and Olivia was fiercely proud of her daughter's accomplishments. Thomas found his calling not in ranching but in veterinary medicine, apprenticing with the territorial veterinarian and eventually taking over his practice. He still lived on the ranch, treating their animals and those of neighboring spreads, bridging his love for the land with his own unique skills. The Double I Ranch had grown from Ali's father's modest beginning into one of the most respected operations in northern Arizona. But more importantly, it had become a true family legacy, with 3 generations now calling it home. In 1920, on their 27th wedding anniversary, Ali surprised Olivia with a trip back to Ash Fork. They visited the sites of her old jobs, most of which had changed or closed. The mercantile was under new ownership. Mrs. Halloway's boarding house had been converted into apartments. The Silver Star Saloon was still standing, though Jake had retired and sold it years ago. "Look how much has changed," Olivia marveled as they walked the main street together. "Not everything," Illy countered, pointing to the church where they had married. "That is still the same." They stopped by to see Jake, now in his 70s and living with his daughter. His face lit up when he saw them. "Well, if it is not the ranch king and queen themselves," he said, pulling Olivia into a careful hug. "You two still look happy as newlyweds." 27 years, Olivia told him, "and I love him more every year." "That is how it should be." Jake studied them both with satisfaction. "I knew that night, you know. When he asked me about you, I knew he was smitten. And when you came in asking about him the next day, I knew you were interested too, even if you did not want to admit it yet." "You never told me that," Olivia said accusingly. "Some things are better left unsaid until the right time. The right time is now, apparently, 27 years later." He laughed his wheezy old man laugh. "I am glad I lived long enough to see how well you two turned out." They spent the afternoon with Jake, reminiscing about old times and filling him in on the family news. When they finally left, promising to visit again soon, Olivia felt a bittersweet ache in her chest. "We are getting old," she said to Illy as they drove back to the ranch in their automobile, a modern convenience they had finally invested in. "We are getting older," he corrected, "but I do not feel old when I am with you. Flatterer. Truth teller." He reached over and squeezed her knee. "You are just as beautiful to me now as you were the first night I saw you. I was exhausted and half-starved that night, and still the most beautiful woman in the room, still the most beautiful woman in any room as far as I am concerned." She placed her hand over his on her knee. "How did I get so lucky?" "We both got lucky. We found each other when we needed it most." He glanced at her with a smile. "Though I maintain that I needed you more than you needed me." "That is absolutely false. I would have died within a year if you had not intervened." "You are too stubborn to die. You would have found another way." They could have continued the argument, a familiar, loving debate they had been having for decades. But instead, they drove in comfortable silence, watching the familiar landscape roll past, heading home to the life they had built together. Margaret gave Samuel 3 more children over the years, 2 girls and another boy. Rose married a fellow college graduate who understood her ambitions and supported her work on the ranch. Thomas married a quiet schoolteacher, and they had twin daughters who kept everyone entertained. The ranch house expanded to accommodate family gatherings, and Sunday dinners became a tradition with all the children and grandchildren crowding around the large table Illy had built specifically for that purpose. Olivia cooked, though these days she had help from daughters and daughters-in-law who were learning her recipes and techniques. On these Sundays, watching her family laugh and talk and share their lives, Olivia sometimes felt overwhelmed by the enormity of what she and Illy had created. All these people, all these lives, stemming from that single choice she had made to trust a blue-eyed cowboy's improbable offer. "What are you thinking about?" Illy would ask, always attuned to her moods. "About how full my life is, about how different things could have been." "But they are not different. They are exactly as they should be." And he would smile at her across the crowded table, and she would smile back, and the grandchildren would demand their attention, and the moment would pass. But the gratitude remained, a constant undercurrent to all her days. In 1928, they celebrated their 35th anniversary with a party at the ranch that seemed to include half of northern Arizona. The Double I had become an institution, and Illy and Olivia were respected pillars of their community. But despite the success and the respect and the prosperity, they remained fundamentally the same people they had always been. 2 survivors who had found each other and built something beautiful together. That night, After all the guests had left and the house was finally quiet, they sat on their porch as they had done thousands of times before. They were both 60 now, grandparents many times over, their hair fully silver and their faces lined with decades of living. 35 years, Olivia marveled. More than half my life spent with you, the best half, I hope. Without question the best half. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Do you remember what you said to me that first night when you made your offer? I said a lot of things that first night. You said I was working myself to death and I deserved better. You were right about both things. I often am. His tone was light, teasing, modest as always. She poked him gently in the ribs. But seriously, Illy, thank you. For seeing me, for saving me, for loving me, for giving me this life. We gave it to each other, Olivia. That is what you never seemed to understand. Yes, I offered you the job, but you are the one who made this place a home. You are the one who gave me a family, who turned a lonely ranch into a legacy. He tilted her chin up so she had to meet his eyes. I love you. After 35 years, I love you more than I can possibly express. You are my heart, my home, my everything. And you are mine. She kissed him softly. Always and forever. They stayed on the porch until the stars came out, talking quietly about their children and grandchildren, making plans for the ranch's future, simply enjoying each other's company as they had done for more than 3 decades. Eventually, they went inside to bed, helping each other with the little tasks that age had made more difficult. Illy's knees were not what they once were, and Olivia's hands sometimes ached with arthritis. But they faced these changes together, with humor and patience and the deep partnership they had spent a lifetime building. As Olivia drifted off to sleep that night, she thought about the promise Illy had made all those years ago. Work one, mine, and let me provide the rest. He had kept that promise beyond her wildest imagination. He had provided not just a job and a home, but love and partnership and a family, and a life richer than anything she could have dreamed. But she had provided things too, stability and warmth and a reason to come home. Children who carried both their legacies forward. A partnership that had made the ranch more successful than Illy could have managed alone. They had provided for each other, building something together that was far greater than the sum of its parts. And as she fell asleep in her husband's arms, in the home they had shared for 35 years, Olivia knew with absolute certainty that she would not change a single moment of their journey together. Not the exhausting early days when she had worked 3 jobs to survive. Not the fear she had felt accepting Illy's offer. Not the challenges they had faced building the ranch and raising their family. Not the inevitable sorrows that come with any long life. Because all of it, every moment, had led to this, a love that had lasted a lifetime and would endure until their final breaths. A family that would carry their legacy forward into the future. A home that had sheltered generations and would shelter more to come. The cowboy had offered her 1 job instead of 3. She had accepted, and in doing so, had found everything she had never known she needed. It was, she thought as sleep finally claimed her, the best decision she had ever made. And she knew Illy would say the same about his impulsive offer to an exhausted woman working in a saloon. Together, they had transformed survival into thriving, loneliness into love, and uncertainty into a future bright with promise. That was the real magic of their story. Not that one person saved the other, but that they had saved each other, choosing partnership and love and building a life that honored both of them. As the years continued to pass and their story continued to unfold, that truth remained constant. They were better together than either could have been alone. And that, in the end, was the greatest provision of all.